I have big news. I am pregnant with my fourth baby boy, and I'm so excited to share this journey with you. I am currently 22 weeks pregnant, so I'm not exactly in the early trimesters, but because of my history of loss and secondary fertility issues, I have been a little bit more nervous about announcing my pregnancy. However, we had the anatomy scan a few weeks ago. Even though there was a few things in it that we are going to be monitoring, such as the baby's growth and some fluid on his kidneys, I wanted to share the good news with everyone. I've shared in the past a little bit about my fertility journey, especially getting pregnant with this baby number 4. And even though this isn't exactly related to breastfeeding, I thought some of you might find value in it, as I've shared some of my secondary infertility issues, as well as my journey with endometriosis and now PCOS. I have gotten an influx of messages from people saying that they were so grateful for me sharing my story and my experience because they could relate so much. So yes, this is our 4th baby, though we have lost quite a few babies through miscarriage. A lot of people will hear 4 babies and they'll think fertility issues, you couldn't possibly have fertility issues, or why would you even care if you couldn't get pregnant? The thing with secondary infertility is that it can feel very lonely, just like primary infertility, but for different ways, because often you feel like you don't quite fit into that infertility category because you have been blessed with other children, and people will often make ignorant comments like, shouldn't you just be grateful for the babies that you have, or why would you even want more children? And in my opinion, it doesn't matter how many children you have. If you are struggling to have the size of family that you have always dreamed of or desired, and it's just not happening, your experience and your feelings are valid. I will never claim to understand the experience of those that go through primary infertility, and my heart goes out to you if you're still waiting for your first baby. But I definitely can speak to the pain that comes from wanting to have another child, whether it's the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th, and your body not cooperating. It is heartbreaking to have those negative tests after negative tests, or to have repeated losses, which I have had. Most all of my losses have been in the first trimester, and that also has been difficult because a lot of times people will say things like, oh, at least it was early, or it probably says something was wrong with the baby, so blah, blah, blah. People say these things to be helpful, but they really aren't that helpful. All of these babies were so wanted, and it was heartbreaking to get a positive test and to start to feel that excitement about another baby, only to have that dashed within a couple of days or a couple of weeks, depending on the situation. We started trying to get pregnant over 3 years ago when my youngest son was about 2.5. I had struggled to get pregnant with him. It took about 18 months, so I was like, let's try and get pregnant. I did end up getting pregnant about 4 or 5 months in, and we were so excited. Miscarriage was not even something on my mind. We were about to go to Utah for a family vacation. My doctor had done a blood test. She said, let's just do it to be careful, just so we can make sure pregnancy is progressing. I was starting to feel sick. My pregnancy tests were getting darker, and I was really excited. That morning we left for the trip, I got my blood test back, and it was only at 20, and my progesterone was at 3. This was devastating to me because as much as I hoped that maybe these levels were just early, in my heart I knew that they weren't. I knew that any level below 5 generally was not going to be viable, especially for where I was in the pregnancy. We did get a second test done while I was on vacation, and those levels did continue to drop, which was very sad. I had all these hopes and dreams of this 4th little baby that I thought the timing was going to be perfect for, and that just didn't happen. I ended up having that miscarriage start while we were on our vacation, and it was hard, but I'm grateful I had my little family. I remember my 2.5-year-old, at one point I just went and laid on the ground, and he came up and he put his head on me. He said, Mommy, it's okay. He had no idea what was going on, but he just told me over and over again, it's going to be okay. And then from then on, I thought, oh, maybe I'll get pregnant again pretty quickly. That did not happen. Month after month went by. I did not get pregnant. I decided to start seeing my OB. They specialize in NAPRO technology, which is an alternative to some of the more traditional fertility methods out there. We started doing some blood tests, and from that we did some nutritional counseling, and I ended up getting a hysteroscopy. During my ultrasounds, it showed that I had a thickened lining, so they're like, let's do a hysteroscopy to see if there's any issues. I did have some polyps, which they removed, and they thought, oh, that might help you get pregnant. I've also had really low progesterone, and so I started on progesterone supplementation. We went on with this, nothing happened, I didn't get pregnant, and so we decided to do another surgery. Back in 2018, before I got pregnant with my 3rd son, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. I had excision surgery, and I actually got pregnant within a month after that surgery, after we'd been trying for about 18 months. I had a miscarriage the month previous to that surgery as well, and it was so exciting to finally get pregnant again. So my doctor thought, why don't we try it? We did the surgery, and she did find scar tissue from the first surgery, as well as more endometriosis tissue. She was able to remove this, and we felt very hopeful that we might be able to have another baby. I had actually gotten pregnant right before this surgery, which I thought was wonderful timing. I was like, I don't have to have surgery. This is perfect timing. But I lost that baby as well. And that was a continual process for a while. And when all has been said and done, I have had at least 5 miscarriages that were early losses. And I suspect there may have been more. I just wasn't always testing. I came to realize that I had major test anxiety with pregnancy tests because it was just so stressful taking a test, seeing it be positive, and taking another test the next day and seeing it be almost negative. So over the next several months, we discussed different options with the doctor. We did pretty much every testing you could do under the sun, and most everything came back normal. We suspected I had PCOS based on some of my blood tests. I was able to confirm that earlier this year, 2025, when I had an MRV of my pelvis. We were checking for another syndrome called May-Thurner syndrome. And they said, your ovaries have lots of peripheral cysts, which are consistent with PCOS, especially when correlated with other blood tests, which basically confirmed that diagnosis. There's a lot of reason for early losses or chemical pregnancies, which is what people refer to them as. I hate that term because it makes it feel like you weren't actually pregnant when you were. But I suspect that some of that was because of PCOS, that my eggs just weren't developing correctly and they weren't viable for whatever reason. So I started talking to the OB that I've gone to. We tried different things. We did more progesterone supplementation, and we started to try letrozole with monitored ultrasounds. I did this for 3 or 4 months, and it was just a lot. I had to go in for multiple ultrasounds a month. The letrozole made me be in so much debilitating pain each month. I could not even get off the couch because it just made ovulation so miserable. Each time there was 1 or 2 follicles that developed and looked like they would be good options if I were to get pregnant that month. I felt like they maybe got a little bit big, but there's different opinions on that. But I never got pregnant. I just felt like we were spending so much money and I just could not handle it anymore. I just told them I can't do this. I just feel frustrated and I don't want to do this anymore. So I called it quits. And then I decided to talk to another fertility clinic that did IUI. My clinic does not do IUI or IVF because they are a religious Catholic clinic. That's their background, especially with NAPRO technology. So they don't do ART or assisted reproductive technology. So I went and I had a visit with another fertility clinic in the area. They looked over all our tests. They said, we think you're probably a good candidate for IUI. But as my husband and I talked about it, I just did not feel good about it. I felt like it was money. I was feeling very comfortable about spending, and I did not feel like the success rate was quite there. So I thought about it, I prayed about it, and I felt very strongly that I needed to just stop what I was doing. And that was scary. At the time, we were doing medications and ultrasounds, and I was on so many supplements, and I was using every tracking device out there. I was using Anito, Keg, and Temp Drop. And out of those fertility devices, I actually found them very valuable. I talked about Anito in the past, and I do think it's a great tool for figuring out what's going on with your body. But in the end, I was like, I need to stop all this tracking. I just wanted to go back to the basics. And that was scary because it made me realize you might not ever have another baby if you stop doing all of this. But at the same time, I really felt like that is what God was directing me to do and that everything would be okay. Around this same time, I went and I took some prenatal vitamins and they fell on the ground, and I was so annoyed and I just burst into tears. And as I was on the ground and they had gone under my dresser, I pulled them out and I found a little sign that had fallen behind my dresser a couple of years ago. And on it, it said, trusting in God means trusting in his timing. And to me, that was a tender mercy that God was very aware of my struggle and that all things were done in his time. And so I went forward, I stopped all the treatments, and I decided to invest in an egg quality supplement as well as a really high quality prenatal vitamin. And I will say, I know this is controversial. There are doctors and Instagram accounts out there that are very against designer prenatals. And I can understand their perspectives, but I truly believe that these made a big difference for me. They contain things that both my OBGYN and the fertility clinic that I spoke to had said I should use. And I felt that because of the PCOS and other issues that, or the suspected PCOS at that point, and then all the early losses, that there was something going on with my egg quality. And so I started taking those and I felt like there was an increase in the cervical mucus and I felt like I just felt better. Maybe it was placebo effect. I don't know. After that, I decided to try acupuncture. And I think honestly, that was one of the biggest things. I started acupuncture in January. I actually got pregnant in February, though that was another early loss. After that, though, I did get pregnant with this baby and that pregnancy has stuck. And that acupuncture, I went every single week. I felt great. I felt like it was truly helping. And they also recommended that I take L-arginine, which helps with blood flow. And I feel like that made a difference too. The other things that I did, this one was unintentional, but in January of this year, I had a UTI that would not go away. I was on multiple rounds of antibiotics, and finally it went away after about a month. And when I was talking to my doctor, she's honestly, that might have made a difference. It may have cleared up some kind of infection that we weren't able to test for that was making you not be able to get pregnant and stay pregnant. And then I also did temp tracking. As I mentioned, I use lots of other tracking tools at other points, but I decided to just go back to the temp drop. This is my favorite tracking device because it's so easy to use. There's not really ongoing cost unless you buy the advanced app, which is like $4.99 a month or something like that. But I have always felt like temp tracking along with cervical mucus tracking was really important. And so I decided to try using this just so I can make sure I was accurately pinpointing my fertile window alongside the cervical mucus. And I did use those cheapo testing strips for ovulation. And then finally, I also used Mucinex, which is a very popular thing that is recommended in lots of fertility groups out there. And I did think that it helped. I used it for the first time the month I got pregnant, and here I am pregnant. So that's just a background on all of our fertility issues and how I'm pregnant now. I don't even know if any of those things or a combination of all those things were the reason why I finally got pregnant, or if it was just, again, God's timing for our family. I am so excited about this little baby. Like I said, found out that he is about a week behind measurement-wise. All of his vital organs still look good. And he does have fluid on his kidneys, which I spiraled for about 24 hours after we found all this information out, just because I went down the Google rabbit hole, which I don't recommend doing. But I feel at peace now. We have a visit with an MFM in a few weeks. I also have Crohn's disease, which has been complicated during this pregnancy. There have been many weeks where I haven't been able to eat much of anything, and that might be also impacting the growth. And typically with Crohn's disease, they do recommend an MFM following use throughout the pregnancy. Overall, though, we are so excited and we feel so blessed. It is not lost on me that this is a huge blessing, and it may not have ever happened. And I kind of accepted the month I got pregnant. I told my husband, I am done. I'm not doing this anymore. Even though I had felt very strongly that there was another baby. I had an experience after my third son was born, while I was still in the delivery room, that there was another sweet spirit that was supposed to come to our family. And that is what I clung on to throughout all of this. Because during that pregnancy, I said, I'm not having any more. It was so hard. Pregnancy is not easy on my body. But after he was born, I did feel very strongly that there was another baby. And we can't wait to have this fourth boy join our family. We love boys. My boys are just the best of the best. And I am so grateful for an opportunity to be their mother and to have this other baby boy to be a mother to as well. I also hope that this video might give some hope to others out there struggling with secondary infertility. For me, I was able to get pregnant easily with my first two children. I was much younger though. I was in my early 20s. And I never thought that I would have trouble getting pregnant. However, as my endometriosis progressed and other health issues I had continued on, I feel like this is what was the result, was having trouble getting pregnant. And so I'm grateful that I had those children when I did, and grateful for having this child now. After I did get pregnant, I called the doctor. They did a bunch of blood tests. They ran my progesterone and my estrogen. My estrogen was a little low, so they put me on DHEA supplements, which helped increase it. That is also more of a alternative medicine approach to lower estrogen, but I'm grateful that they were willing to do that. I had several ultrasounds in the beginning just to make sure everything was going well. And my doctor midwife team has been really great. They were so excited. And when I told them I was pregnant, they knew how much we had wanted to get pregnant. So I'm grateful for them. They are here in Denver. If you need a great team, if you're struggling with fertility issues, definitely let me know and I will let you know who they are. Otherwise, this is just kind of a random vlog, I guess you could call it, and I'll probably do some more updates throughout the pregnancy before the baby comes, but I hope that anyone that's watching this, like I said earlier, maybe it'll bring you some hope or some ideas. And yeah, we appreciate your prayers and your excitement for this sweet little boy, and I will keep you updated on Instagram. So if you're not following me there, go over there and check it out. And if you have any questions, just drop them below.